Jimmy McAllion found the net. Goal for Wednesday.
Terrific goal by Taylor.
Chris Waddle, is he going to have a crack?
Oh, he does, and it's goal. Still Glenn Wheeler. Aidan Flynn works the It's the time for a winner.
Hello and welcome all to the Wednesday Till I Die pod, and you join us for another one of those specials with the world-leading chief football finance expert, Mr. Kieran Maguire. Kieran, how are you? You okay?
I'm good, although sadly, whenever I come on this show, Matt, I always feel a bit like the Grim Reaper. So I'm so looking forward to being able to come to Sheffield and just watch football. Even when we did a live version of The Price of Football in Rotherham last year, the first question, and apologies for people with a sensitive disposition, somebody stuck up, we did a Q&A session, and the first question, somebody stuck up his hand and said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how fucked is Sheffield Wednesday? And you go, well, that's a fair question. I think we said at the time 11.
Oh dear. Well, on the other side of it, Kieran, is when we last spoke, obviously we were really grateful for you joining us on the day of celebration where Sheffield Wednesday was nicely revoked from the hands of our former chairman. I will just update you here, Kieran. You are immune from this rule, but I am unable to say his name on this podcast now. But yeah, you obviously joined us with Chris for that particular special where it turned into a bit of a celebration and a party. What I would say is October seems an awful long time ago to Sheffield Wednesday fans, and the reality of administration and a transfer window has firmly set in. I suppose the first question, Kieran, from your perspective, again, with all of the knowledge that you have surrounding football finance, and obviously you've followed this story and our previous chairman very, very closely for years. Would it be possible to provide a brief summary of the financial picture at Sheffield Wednesday, how it stands right now, a little bit about out of the administration process from your perspective, points deduction, and I suppose really where it leaves us currently?
Well, Chris Wigfield and Paul Stanley are running Sheffield Wednesday Football Club Limited on a day-to-day basis. They've also got control over Sheffield 3, even though it's not doing anything apart from just physically owning the stadium. If you've read the interim report on Sheffield 3, and I'm sure you're much closer to the pronouncements from Chris himself, there are interested parties. We always said there would be interested parties, so I don't think that's anything itself which was particularly spectacular. It looks as if they have been narrowed down. It looks as if there is now a preferred bidder, which is good in one way, but I would always be slightly cautious because Derby County Football Club had a preferred bidder in a guy called Chris Kirchner, and he didn't buy the club, and he is currently doing 25 years in prison for fraud, part of which would have been involving the utilisation of Derby County. Now, let it be said, there is absolutely no evidence that Sheffield Wednesday Football Club are in a similar position. Chris Kirchner was a sort of semi-skilled fraudster. So that's where we are. The administrators are looking to sell the assets of the football club to raise enough money so that they can pay New Avenue projects in full, because they've got a debenture over the stadium, to pay everybody else 25 pence in the pound. Now, some people will say, well, hold on, HMRC do have preference here. It was noticeable in the case of Derby County that the administrators managed to persuade HMRC to take 25 pence in the pound as opposed to their full entitlement. Whether that can be achieved here, we will have to wait and see. Whether we've set a precedent which means that HMRC are going to fold is something that we have to wait further times for. And then once that deal goes through, if there is enough money to pay our main creditors in full, and that would also include any football creditors. I'm not being rude here. I don't think you've necessarily got huge football creditors because under the reign, is it okay if I refer to him as Del Boy?
Yeah, you are more than welcome to.
Okay, right. Under the reign of Del Boy in the last couple of years, you weren't signing players for fees. So therefore, I suspect that there's relatively low amounts due to other football clubs for unpaid transfer fees, but they have to be paid in full as well. If you can then pay the person that's been bringing the pies, the person that's been washing the windows, the St John's ambulance, the coach company that's been taking the squad to away matches, if Sheffield Wednesday via the administrators can then pay all of those people at least 25 pence in the pound, happy days. You know, in terms of future consequences. If not, you will face a 15-point deduction at the start of the 2006-07 season. And let's be honest, that's going to be in League One. So you would start on minus 15 points. Now, we did see a few years ago, certainly Leeds United started off on a negative points figure. And I think Southampton may have done so as well. I can't remember. So yeah. I can't say that for certain. And both clubs, because they were big clubs in a similar manner to Sheffield Wednesday, put in a fairly decent shift that season. And yes, 15 points is not something that you want, but it is something that can be overcome if your aim is to get into the playoffs. Right? You know, I don't think you're going to get automatic, but playoffs are still feasible. So that's where we are. In terms of why has no deal gone through to date, there's a few things to take into consideration. First of all, because the EFL wants to avoid what is sometimes referred to as pre-pack administrations. Now, a pre-pack administration is where a company, and this has happened with some football clubs, including, I think, some football clubs not too far away from Sheffield, where they effectively go into administration for 5 minutes. And then they are sold by the administrators, by golly, to the old owners who buy the assets off the administrator and used to pay absolutely nothing across to the creditors. In order to discourage that, that's why they've done two things. They've introduced the 15-point rule, and they've also said that the company, the club, has to go into administration effectively for at least 30 days. That's to stop people from gaming the system. So that's one reason for the delay. I think the second reason for the delay is sifting the wheat from the chaff. There's an awful lot of lunatics, tire kickers, fantasists that engulf football when there's an opportunity to make a name for themselves. Some people will do it even if they have no intention of buying the club whatsoever, but it allows them to go onto social media and say, yeah, I'm thinking of buying Sheffield Wednesday. And automatically you've got an extra few thousand of followers and so on, and they get off on that. So I think Begbie's have managed to get rid of those. So it looks like we now have a consortium, which is the preferred bidder. The benefit of having a consortium is that you are not reliant upon a single person. So yeah, if you've got one person in charge of the club and they lose interest, and that's what happened with Derby and Mel Morris. He woke up one morning and said, I put the thick end of 200 million into the club. I'm about to be majorly rumbled in terms of some of the unusual financial practices at the club. Let's call the whole thing off. So you're not reliant on one person's wealth, so you can spread the money coming potentially in from a variety of sources, or that person's personal circumstances change. We saw that with Bury Football Club. They were owned by a guy called Stuart Day, who ran some sort of, it certainly looked like a Ponzi scheme involving student car park places. But but it doesn't mean that it was. Just in case his lawyers are listening, it just looked like it. Just looked like it. Okay. So that's what happened there, and even if you look at Chelsea and Roman Abramovich, his circumstances changed because he became persona non grata as far as the UK government is concerned. So if you can spread the load, that's the good thing. The downside of that is that if you've got 5 people in a consortium, that means 5 people have to pass the owners and directors test and so on. And I'm certainly aware of one other club in the north of England where a takeover fell apart because one of the consortium, it's a bit like when you're going out with your mates. Yeah, we're going to go to that nightclub. We're going to go to that nightclub. We're going to go to that nightclub. You're all about to pile in. He gets to the door. So, oh, blimey, didn't know it's that expensive. And then he goes, oh, I'm pulling out. And the rest of you go, oh, no. Because what do we do? So that can be part of the negative of these. So that's where we appear to be at present. And when you contacted me, I think this was on the back of the administrator's interim report on Sheffield 3 Limited, and some people were saying, well, hold on, we've not seen one for Sheffield Wednesday Football Club Limited. Should we be reading anything into that? And in my opinion, I can't quote this as fact, but in my opinion, it's a lot easier to sell a piece of real estate than it is to sell a football club with lots of moving parts. So I think they're waiting for the end of the January transfer window, for example, to be able to summarise where we're up to.
Yeah, because that was the interesting thing, obviously, because with all of this administration process, we knew obviously prior to this that the previous owner had separated the football stadium and multiple parts of the football club into various different Sheffield 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 270 odd or whatever it was. And there was a separate company owning Hillsborough. Both of those were placed into administration, but both were wrapped up and packaged in the form of the deal for the football club. And I think the reported figure that Chris at the time spoke about was the fact that it was a £30 million sale to avoid and negate any 15-point deduction. Can I just ask, Kieran, what are the implications of a dual structure for a sale of the club and the stadium? So what, both entities effectively have been filed notice under administration. What does that mean for a prospective buyer? Is there a gap there where somebody could decide to insert themselves into the deal per se?
Well, Begbie's have a responsibility towards the creditors of both Sheffield 3 Limited and Sheffield Wednesday Football Club Limited to do the best deal on behalf of the creditors. So in theory, you could end up with 2 independent owners. But Sheffield Wednesday is worth far more as a bundle, in my opinion, than the 2 elements separate, because certainly when we saw with Derby County, Mel Morris, he kept ownership of the stadium and only put the football club into administration. And that meant that some people who were trying to bid for Derby County, who are also, it has to be said, trying to bid for Sheffield Wednesday Football Club, they thought they were a good chance of getting a deal to buy the football club, but Mel Morris didn't like them. So therefore, he quoted an extortionate fee for the stadium, and that person, who may have been interested in both clubs, decided to walk away. So I think that was one of the things which I was delighted to see when the administration was announced, because it allows Begbie's to just get on with what they're doing without somebody in the background still being a bit of a puppet master in terms of controlling who the ultimate new buyer can be. Del Boy can't do that. So that's a positive.
Yeah, massive positive. And I think the reason why I asked that question is because one of the, obviously, before we go on to talk about James Board and the consortium that have come out and spoken about themselves being the consortium who have rumoured to have bid for the football club and are allegedly in the preferred bidder status here. I did just want to touch on one of those individuals who did create such a situation in Mike Ashley, down the road from myself in Birmingham at Coventry, who inserted himself into a deal, who was rumoured to be sniffing around Sheffield Wednesday. that particular situation, a stadium being separated from ownership of so the football club and the stadium being separated, if a third party is inserted into that particular thing, how much of an issue does it become for, I suppose, a commercial and a legal aspect of things? Because I think when you look at Coventry, it's very easy to get clouded by the success on the pitch, if that makes sense.
Yes. I've had conversations with my secret Play Up Sky Blues contact. And for people not familiar with what's happened at Coventry City Football Club, the stadium went into administration and was bought by one of Mike Ashley's companies. And the football club was then acquired by a guy, I think his name is Doug King.
Yes, it is.
So certainly, have they been successful on the pitch? Yes. They now, I believe, have control over the stadium. My sources suggest that was quite a painful exercise to go through, in the sense that administrators are actually, and this is not a criticism of Paul Stanley or Chris. They're actually quite simple. We want to get as much money as possible. That's it. No complications, and we want to get it done as quickly as possible. So that works. From what I heard at Coventry, you'd go into a meeting with the owners of the stadium, and one day they wanted X, and the next day they wanted X plus 2, and the next day they wanted X minus 3, and the goalpost just kept shifting all of the time, and it became a frustrating exercise. Completely overshadowed by the fact that they've been brilliant on the pitch, and therefore nobody actually really cares, because you fall in love with the football club for what you see in terms of what's produced by the shirts. But it hasn't been far, as far as the new owners of the football club are concerned. But they are in a much stronger position than they were. When was it? It begins with I can't remember the name of Mike Ashley's company, but they were a royal pain in the arse to deal with, according to I know one of the again I know one of the coaches via his agent who relays this to me.
Yeah. No, of course, I understand. I think before we move on, I'm just going to highlight this question that's just come in here from Matt Richards, and it's a really good question. It was what I was going to just come on to before we start moving on to, actually, Kieran, talking about something that when we first spoke near enough 9 months ago, we were thinking, can we talk about positive things and maybe look towards the future? It's this one from Matt Richards here, because obviously at the weekend we bid farewell, or an emotional farewell, so it seemed, to 10-year servant and club legend Barry Bannon. He is being sold for a relatively nominal fee. The rumour is that he is off to Millwall and that he is there this evening at the time of recording, completing a medical. We are also having quite a lot of clubs looking at various players within our playing squad. And Matt's question is, what could happen if the sale of assets brings the club valuation and bid down to that on par with previous bids that were not progressed to the preferred bidder status? Does it reopen a bidding process, or is it protected by the period of exclusivity that a named buyer has got into?
It's a cop-out answer. The answer is depends, because if the administrators sold the registrations of all of the players, then what do the new owners have to negotiate with? That they would have to take. If I bought your house, Matt, and you the day before I moved in, you uninstalled the bathroom, I go, hold on, what? I'm sure there's a bath and a shower and all that. So, and I would say, well, that wasn't part of the broader fixtures and fittings. So you have to have fluidity and flexibility when it comes to a football club, because some of the assets have to be sold on a piecemeal basis. And it's we're recording this on the 26th of January. It's payroll next couple of days. And people have to take that into consideration, and it is Begbie's responsibility to make sure that those payroll obligations are met. Their reputation would suffer a catastrophic negative if they failed to do that. So they will have been moving behind the scenes to generate as much revenue from as many individual asset sales, and players are very, very easy assets to sell.
Yeah.
Because all that you're doing is you're accepting a compensation fee for the registrations that the club currently has. Could that have implications as far as the price is concerned? The simple answer is yes. Could that have implications as far as next season is concerned? Yes, it could, in terms of 15-point penalty. I'm not saying that these things are completely independent, but I would have thought that any prospective owner would want to do as much as they can to avoid that. And even if they end up paying slightly over the odds, if they've done their sums and they say, well, this is what we're going to do in terms of our playing budget for 26-27, this is who we've got in lined up to be manager, this is what we think we can recruit with on this budget, and we're reasonably confident we can get in the playoffs. And if you and I'm sorry if I'm sounding like being negative, say you're relegated, but
yeah,
we
are. Kieran, let me just get the elephant in the room out of the way. We were relegated in August.
Yeah, I'm trying to be polite because we're all football fans.
Thanks, I really appreciate it.
And we both play in blue and white stripes, so I've got a big affection for Wednesday. But the difference between going up in the first season and not going up is that if you take a look at the EFL broadcast deal, Sheffield Wednesday this season will get around about £11 million from both the EFL and what we refer to as solidarity payments from the Premier League. If you drop down, when you drop down into League One, that falls. You get 80% of the deal goes to the Championship, 12% goes to League One. So you're getting just less than 1/6 of that. So it's probably about 1.7 mil. If you can get promoted, you go from 1.7 mil back up to 11 again. So if I was the prospective owner, I would be saying, I'll do my sums. If we take the 15-point penalty, can we spend a bit more money on players? This is what we think we can do. If we pay a little bit more for the football club so that we don't have to pay the 15-point penalty, we might have a slightly lower budget, but we've got a greater chance of getting back into the Championship in that first season. And that will be part of sort of the internal workings, the internal mechanisms of the bidder.
Okay, interesting. Because obviously at the minute, when we're speaking about assets, Sheffield Wednesday actually has very few assets to be able to sell due to the previous owner's reign of pretty much stripping everything back and allowing everything to rust effectively for the previous decade. And we are now left with the only viable assets for sale are the players on the pitch. There is a slight concern amongst Sheffield Wednesday fans, and again, this will be impossible for you to actually concretely say one way or another without actually seeing the books and seeing what people are working with here. There is a slight growing feeling, it's not amongst everybody, but it is people wondering with regards to the revenue that is generated from player sales. Is that going towards the operational day-to-day running of the football club? Or is it actually going towards the new owners? Because presumably the new owners would stand to benefit from player sales. Would I be right in assuming that?
It is certainly that money is in the hands of Begbie, so therefore it's going to pay for the window cleaner, it's going to pay for payroll and so on. So because otherwise, where is the club going to generate money from? There was that boost in season ticket sales when the administrators was appointed, but that money's now gone, and so on. So it is as far as there's another elephant in the room. I don't know whether the money coming in is enough to meet the ongoing obligations of the administration. Now, again, I keep going back to Derby County, but I think there are a lot of similarities, and I think there are also some substantial differences. In the case of Derby County, Mel Morris was not a popular man with the Derby County fan base. I don't think he was as loathed as Del Boy is.
It's close.
But he was owed, based on my figures, around about £200 million. And he said, I don't want any of it. So therefore, he didn't go in for a claim and he didn't have to get 25% of it. And the one thing that I always wondered, because I had this conversation with some other insolvency professionals. I'm not, by the way, I'm just a teacher. That who was funding the running of the administration, and the consensus was, and we have got absolutely nothing to back this up.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got absolutely no evidence. The consensus was Mel Morris, for all his faults, was actually running the show, i.e., providing money to allow the administration to go through its due process, because for all of his faults, he did not want to see Derby County destroyed.
Yeah.
I don't think your previous owner has that amount of dignity in him, or B, can afford to take the hit.
Yeah.
We don't know the extent of his financial situation, but somebody turned the taps off in terms of his ability to fund the club, and therefore one would imagine that he's probably desperate for every penny at present.
Yeah, okay. Let's shift conversation gear into something that potentially is a little more positive here, which is just to touch on, because obviously it is just speculation and rumour. I know the James Board and the individuals as a consortium have come out and named themselves as the preferred bidders in a press release that didn't come out obviously officially through the club because they're unable to, but actually came out through local media and journalists. So just to run you through it, obviously, it identified the preferred bidding consortium, which is led by James Board, professional poker player, tech founder, and also worked with a very close relative of somebody who is very near and dear to your heart, Kieran and Tony Bloom. He is alongside Felix Römer. I've probably butchered that, but that's as good as it's going to get. And Al Sharif Faisal bin Jamil. Is there anything that we can gauge off the consortium's financial credibility and strategic vision, purely because obviously Board currently is involved in, or currently owns, Dunfermline. He's involved with Cordoba, obviously in Spain as well, and a few other clubs. And would you be able to talk us through the pros and cons of multi-club ownership from their perspective?
Right. I don't have enough information to make any advisable comment. So it's best if I say nothing in terms of his funding. The advantages of an MCO are that if you are the second or the third club which is acquired by that person, they will have. It's a bit like the first time you go skateboarding. You end up bruised and battered, and the second or third time you do it, you've picked up a few tips. So they will have worked out what is successful and what is not successful from the point of view of trying to run a professional football club. Now, running a club of the magnitude of Dunfermline is a fraction of the complications of running a club of the size of Sheffield Wednesday, but you can sort of effectively use it as a petri dish, as a sort of a mini incubator as to what they think works. And you also find out, actually, do I want to do this? Because the fact that they're coming back for a second bite of the cherry or third bite of the cherry, whatever it's going to be, has got to be a positive. So that's where we are. That they will have learnt experience, and I say running a football club is like running no other business. I used to run companies in administration, but and I used to specialise in pubs and clubs in the northwest of England, and you do weird stuff.
I bet you were busy, Kieran.
I was very busy for two reasons. A, an awful lot of people who run pubs and clubs have absolutely no idea what they're doing. And secondly, I don't drink alcohol, and the busiest nights, of course, as even I know this, in the pubs, in the entertainment trade, in the hospitality trade, is Friday and Saturday night. Yeah. Well, my colleagues where I used to work, they have better things to do because they don't used to go out, drinking and partying and so on. I'm the most boring person in the country. I've got no friends, so therefore I would quite happily go out and do all of this work at the weekends because they'd say just take Mondays off, if you do a couple of evenings. And secondly, I was on 45p a mile, and this was or 35p a mile. And this was sort of the late 80s. So it was a king's ransom compared to what I was actually earning. And I was running places as far north as Ambleside. I was based in Manchester, Crewe and Stoke and Liverpool and all over the northwest, Blackpool and so on. So you learn the hard way through running those businesses. Is actually they're all trying to do the same. Everybody's trying to make a bit of money.
Yeah.
In football, you're not. In football, you're trying to win trophies. Or some people are trying to win trophies, and some people are trying to make a bit of money, and some people are just there for a vanity exercise. And therefore, you've got all of this sort of this. It's a bit like where two rivers meet. You get this sort of this turbulence in the industry. So they will have worked out as far as the board group is concerned what is successful and what is not there. When it comes to an MCO, I can give you the business school answer. And I teach in a business school, I teach in a management school. And the business school answer is that you have what we refer to as synergies. So you have two types of synergies. You've got what we call revenue synergies, which is where, if I own 2 or 3 football clubs, I can go to a sponsor and I can say, you can sponsor a club in England, a club in Scotland, and a club in wherever it may be. And therefore, that's going to increase the amount of interest in your group as a whole. So you can do things like that. And then you've got cost synergies, because in theory, you only need one HR department, you only need one legal department to cover all of the all of the clubs in your MCO. And if you're a bit naughty, and I would not say that this has ever taken place, I'd go as far as to say I would not say this 115 times to say that this has ever taken place. What you can do is that you can allocate the costs in those parts of the MCO which are perhaps not subject to so much scrutiny or don't have cost control rules. So, there are ways of parking monies. If you take a look at Watford, for example, they are owned by the same family that own Udinese, and you look at the number of transactions between Watford and Udinese in terms of player trading. Hassan Kamara, who was Watford's player of the season, I think this was in 21-22. He's only there for 4 or 5 months. Watford got relegated, but he looked a really tidy player. They then sold him to Udinese, booked a really decent profit, good for PSR purposes, but that's what all player sales are. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think the lad was about 26 or 27 years old. So he's an experienced, mature footballer. Udinese then said, "Oh, great! We bought this really good footballer, and rather than bring him into the first team, the next season they loaned him to Watford, back in the Championship." So you go, well, that's really good for Watford, isn't it? Yeah. Who otherwise may have had cost control issues, but perfectly within the rules. So there is the scope for this, and whilst I'm sort of being facetious in terms of sort of the way I'm portraying all of this, it does allow for financial fun and games.
Yeah, which again, from a perspective of. When you were talking there about the fact that you can draw on, I love the skateboarding analogy. I just thought that was exactly what it is, isn't it? Because anybody who has ever stood on a skateboard before has fallen off one as well. If you have stood on one, you've fallen off one. Yes. But then looking at also the slightly more, let's call it cute, not sinister, the cuter side of multi-club ownership in regards to, let's say, if you were to have a club in Scotland and also one in the second tier of Spain, and you were now about to take and acquire one in England, there is multiple ways in which that not only players can be shifted through that, but there is way to ensure that from a financial regulatory perspective, you aren't ending up with or staring down the barrel of 115 charges if you do it correctly. You didn't say that, Kieran, I did. If we're looking at, I suppose, one of the questions surrounding it from Sheffield Wednesday fans, I think, just going back to the administrative process, but it does tie into the consortium that we're discussing here. Sheffield Wednesday fans, on the whole, are under the opinion that this process is taking quite a long time. Administration. Bear in mind that we actually only entered into administration at the end of October. So realistically, we've seen nearly 3 working months of administration. A preferred bidder has been selected. That preferred bidder has now entered into that due diligence process of, I think it's 3 months. Realistically, the time frame that we're talking about here, correct me if I'm wrong, Kieran, to me it feels quite quick, and I know that's going against the grain of very much kind of what other people within the fan base are suggesting. Is that something that, from your perspective as somebody who is who is looking at it from a pure numbers and a finance perspective, would the time frame worry you that we've been able to locate somebody as quickly, or would that just be a mark of what you've often said on here, which is actually the scale and the opportunity at Sheffield Wednesday is for most too good to pass up?
No, I would say, I don't think it's been too long a period. I don't think it's been too short a period. There was this huge megaphone which appeared when Sheffield Wednesday went to administration. So therefore, that allowed Chris and Paul to identify quite a few number of prospective buyers to get rid of the wastrels. And then to say, this is what we're looking for. Can anybody match it? I think, there again, one party is supposed to be lowballing and may come back to the table if the board deal doesn't go through. I don't think it's been an excessive amount of time. From the point of view of a prospective new owner, they are looking at what can they do for the start of next season. That's their focal point. And the quicker they can get in, the quicker they can start to sign up for some infrastructure projects to bring Hillsborough back to the standards I think the fans expect and deserve. That you put up with a lot of garbage from who for a long period of time. So to be treated with a bit of respect is something to look forward to, and also recruiting a squad of players. People will start putting feelers out in March for players that they want to sign in June and July. So we're not that far away. So that's where we are at present, and I would imagine that the new owners really want to go for it for next season, in order to, it doesn't matter whether you're in the Championship or League One or League Two. If you're winning football matches, you've got a smile on your face. Yeah. And it's amazing, and I followed a team which has been relegated on many occasions and has been relegated as far as, down to League Two and at the arse end of League Two. It's amazing how quickly you forget relegation if you start the next season like a train. Yeah. And that will be that feel-good factor, and Hillsborough will be filled to the rafters if you're in the top 6. You know the extent of the fan base, and you'll be that those uncles and nephews and nieces who perhaps wouldn't necessarily go because the weather's not that good, or the mums and dads it's a big match this Tuesday night, it's a big match this Saturday, and the whole family goes because you're going. It's again, I perhaps use too many analogies. I've been in the situation with dying relatives where you go along to hospital and you go there out of a sense of duty, and you go there because you love the other party, and that you're not going to get very much out of it because they're drifting out and out in and out of consciousness. My mum's got dementia at present. I fly across to Ireland. Sometimes she recognises me, sometimes she doesn't. But it's still my mum. Still the person I love, and that's what Sheffield Wednesday fans are doing this season. Yeah, they're going along not to expect Sheffield Wednesday to win football clubs. They're doing it out of a sense of love, out of a sense of duty. Whereas next season, if you start off the season really well, you're doing it for joy. You're doing it with anticipation and expectation and all of the positives that you have when perhaps you're going to see a member of the family that you've not seen, that you really want to see, and you're doing it for all of those different reasons. So I think it's therefore important that we try to get the deal sorted, and I don't think it's either been sort of too short a period or too long a period. Again, Begbie's have their own responsibilities towards the creditors,
Yeah.
and this is and I've heard Simon Jordan talk that he was going to get involved in a consortium and then he didn't because he didn't like the thought of giving any money to Del Boy. I thought, well, yeah, but if you're serious, if you really want to make a difference at a football club, you buy the football club and you go, that's not my problem. That's the administrator's responsibility. My job's to run the football club.
Please don't speak sense, Kieran. It's very easy to talk on a radio show and say things, isn't it? Anyway.
Well, I do.
Yeah, I do it on a Sunday as well. The other question, just before I kind of like start drawing this to a close, is actually you work with. I'm not asking you to name clubs here, but I know you've spoken about Brentford previously. You work with a number of clubs from a football finance perspective in terms of not only looking over their books and commenting on it in a public forum, but also I don't think it's a stretch to go too far to suggest that actually certain clubs are actually quite forward-thinking and progressive in this manner and welcome you in to actually work alongside them and offer suggestions. Can I ask a question from all of your expertise on this? What does a well-run football club look like?
A well-run football club is one which is forward-thinking. A well-run football club is one which has a board of directors with a variety of experiences. Some may support the football club, some may be there as in their own professional capacity. A well-run football club has a strategy and a budget, and in the main, it sticks to it. It makes decisions through a business lens rather than an emotional lens. And anybody that's seen Sunderland Till I Die and Stuart Donald's recruitment of Will Grigg, where that was fantastic television.
Yes,
but it was also, I sometimes show this to my students in terms of negotiation skills or negotiation lack of skills. He wouldn't even say he got played. He played himself.
Yes.
Into a vast overpayment. So it's having the ability to know the value of the negotiations that you're in, and to not be lowballed when selling, and to not overpay when buying. And for that, you need people with experience. And getting that right blend of people with knowledge of the football industry, because it is unique, as we've already said, but also the ability to take on other perspectives. And the final thing is having everybody working together.
Okay.
Because if you've got any executive where you've got factions, I'm not saying we've got this at the top of our government at present, but it's things start to fall apart. And I'm the least party political person around, but you've got to have that common ethos. Doesn't mean that you can't question. And again, sort of having non-executive directors who can come in and have that role as a critical friend, I think is beneficial to all clubs. I mean, in terms of me, I don't get involved in any club at all, apart from what tends to happen. Some of the clubs have worked out, and I don't work in the football industry. I don't work for the regulator either, because to want better, I'd much rather be outside of the tent pissing in, because that means I can retain my independence.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what some clubs do is that 24 hours, 48 hours before they publish their results, they'll send them to me, and they know that means I'm more likely to say nice things about them because they've been nice to me, and being nice has a ripple effect. And secondly, it allows me to ask the questions that the fans might be asking in 48 hours time. So by the time I go onto Twitter, or by the time I go onto the local radio station or a show similar to yours, I did Crew last week. I did another club at the weekend as well. So I did Leicester on Saturday morning. It means that we can sort of preempt some of the things. And I think there's always the biggest issue for me with football is that there's an awful lot of noise, and a good board of directors know how to manage the noise. Because the easiest thing to do is to go and press the ejector button and sack the manager, and that buys you another 3 or 4 months because you get the new manager bounce, of which the data suggests doesn't exist, by the way. We saw that with Nottingham Forest, and the big Ange bounce there. Sometimes a manager can change the ethos of the club, but actually it tends to be the players, because it's the players that score the goals. So being able to ignore noise, and the other thing which I think is absolutely essential is being good communicators.
Yeah,
because if they can come on your show, if they can go on to Football Heaven, and they can articulate, there will be that 10% or 20% of fans that will give them grief regardless.
Yeah.
But that is representative of a much broader issue in society, whereby our opinions are formed by feelings rather than facts. And those people are never going to change their feelings. But an awful lot of people are willing to give people a chance, and by communicating to them and setting out, this is the vision, this is the plan, and explaining the why and the because factors in terms of executive management, without giving anything away, without giving any price sensitive or deal sensitive information, I think is appreciated by fans, and it makes the fan base feel that the owners are on their side. I did quite a bit of work with Lincoln City, who are in League One at present, and they are a superbly run club. They are very, very open. They have regular fan forums. I've been on them on occasion, as a sort of not non-executive, but as an independent friend of the club, and if I disagree with the board, I will say so, but they know that there is nothing coming from a position of malice, and the vast majority of the time, I think this is an example of a club which is punching above its weight this season, because all of the things that I've mentioned to you beforehand have been put into place, and they deserve to be where they are today.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think Lincoln, from when we were last down in League One, obviously they were on that. There was a very positive and feel good factor surrounding the football club at the time there, and I know that they haven't necessarily progressed up through League One into the Championship, but also if you think about the scale of the club and where they're at and how successful that they are and how well run. Yeah, I would agree with you, Kieran. To finish on then, I suppose we are still in some form of purgatory at the minute, in terms of we're in the administration process rather than a new dawn at Sheffield Wednesday with a new ownership. The question that I would really like to finish on is, what broader lessons does Sheffield Wednesday's case, ownership, financial collapse, separate stadium sale, takeover complexities, hold for the wider EFL Championship clubs and, most importantly, the independent football regulator?
Unfortunately, Matt, my observation is that the one thing that football learns is nothing.
Yeah.
Because, we often say that the definition of stupidity is doing something wrong and then doing it again. Well, that's what we see in football. So twisting on 19. If I took you to the casino and we were playing blackjack and I kept twisting on 19, you'd call me an idiot. Well, that's what football clubs do. Yeah. They set a budget in June. They then sometimes overspend towards the end of the window. They then, in the January window, if they're 8th or 9th in the table, the manager goes to the chief executive. I've seen this lad. He looks really tasty. 6 mil. He wants 22 grand a week. Wants a 3.5-year contract. I know we spent our bid budget, and the chief executive says, well, we've already spent our budget, but I'll mention it to the owner. And the owner goes, ooh, I really fancy, we're Chelsea down here next season and Manchester United and Liverpool. Okay, I'll go for it. And only 3 clubs can be promoted.
Yeah.
So, if you are overspending, if we look at the situation that Sheffield Wednesday managed to get themselves into, Chansiri, and the amount of wages that they were spending as a proportion of revenue, that is all high risk. So I think what the regulator will be learning and in my view is learning, is that the current system that we have within football, which is very rules-based, and the trouble with a rules-based environment is that, as we're finding out, for every rule there's a loophole.
Yeah.
And that means that what we might call common justice, and I appreciate that a lawyer would say there's no such thing as common justice. I absolutely get this. And again, lawyers have chastised me and said there's no such thing as loopholes, Kieran. There's only rules. But in a rules-based system, if the rules are poorly drafted, then we end up with the situations such as, Del Boy selling Hillsborough, Birmingham City sold St Andrews, Derby sold their stadium, Reading sold their stadium. All 4 clubs, by the way, ended up with points deductions for other misdemeanors. So, that becomes sort of a bit of a cultural issue. But sort of if we move towards a risk-based approach towards the governance of football, then I think that will be very much a positive step, because if you get people looking at risk, and we all do a risk assessment every day 1,000 times. Yet when you cross a road, what do? You look left and right. When you get in your car, you put on your seatbelt. When you turn on the shower, you test the temperature with your hand before you stepping under it. It might be too hot, might be too cold. We do this without thinking. So bringing more of a risk-based approach, and that is dull, and that is governance-based, and that is business-based into football can reduce the likelihood of similar situations. But if the owner's an idiot,
I'll finish that sentence off. If the owner's an idiot, they spend 12 million quid on Jordan Roads. Anyway,
his initials are. No, I'm getting two letters. The first one's a D.
Oh dear! Somewhere a gentleman in Thailand is furious. Kieran, thank you so much for joining us. And I don't only speak for myself on this, but it has always been an absolute pleasure to have you on and to continue to have you on, because you provide a very level and relatable head to all of this. Because, as you said, as a fan, you get emotionally swept up in things, and it's very easy with a lot of the noise that's out there to get dragged into, maybe that is, that we're seeing something that we aren't actually seeing because of the last 10 years. And to have somebody come on and spell so much of that out and make things a lot clearer is really beneficial. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And I've got to say, Matt, on 2 levels. First of all, I think you produce a really good show. And secondly, I know what you do on a day-to-day basis, and I've got nothing but total respect for you.
Appreciated, Kieran. And there's one here from Hulking Hero saying, thank you, Kieran. I hope the exam marking going well and you've stopped hanging out pencils. Oh dear. Thank you very much all for listening. Please catch James on Wednesday on the debate show, and then on the main shows on Sunday. Thank you very much all. Take care. Have a wonderful evening.
Up the Owls.